Pokemon Legends ZA has a brand new real-time battle system that completely overhauls how moves, stats, and items affect the game, and this has resulted in one of the strangest competitive metagames that the Pokemon franchise has ever seen. Legendary Pokemon are fair and balanced, Brick Break is the best fighting move in the game, Ampharos is the best electric type, and somehow, Watchog is capable of wiping entire lobbies with a single attack. If you have played any amount of competitive Pokemon, you know that all of that sounds absolutely insane, but I swear it's completely true. So all I want to do today is take a video to explain Pokemon Legends ZA's absolutely wacky metagame. Let's just get right into it. Leave a like, subscribe, become a YouTube channel member, hype the video, all of that. And hey, since you guys seem to find it funny, once I hit 300,000 subscribers, I will actually rank every bench in Lumiose City. I'm not joking, I'll do it. This channel is partnered with Gamersupps. If you want to support my work and get great tasting drinks, you can order Gamersupps through my link in the description down below or with code Moxie boosted at checkout for 10% off. Gamersupps is a caffeinated product that I recommend only to my 18+ viewers, but my link will send you to their caffeine-free product section just in case. Every product purchased through my link supports my channel financially, so I'd really appreciate the support. Now back to the video. Okay, before I can explain what Pokemon are actually good in this game, I need to explain really quickly how battles actually work. I promise this is all very interesting and important context to what I'm going to explain later. Hey, don't you dare skip this part, this is important. In ranked matches, you will no longer be having a 1v1 match against another trainer, but it's a free-for-all against 3 other trainers where every team has 3 Pokemon and limited switches. This fact, combined with battles being real-time, means that some of the best Pokemon in the game are Pokemon that can third-party other Pokemon already in a fight. When both Pokemon are softened up from fighting each other, you can just launch an attack into the group and take both KOs. Since battles are only 3 minutes and the winner is determined by who managed to score the most KOs in that time, it's important to use Pokemon that are not only strong enough to actually pick up KOs, but can move fast enough across the map to take as many fights as possible. Something else to note is that since battles are real time, instead of moves using up PP, every move has startup times and cooldown times. A Pokemon's speed stat will only affect their move's cooldowns. It's not going to make them move any faster in the field, as that's determined exclusively by the Pokemon species. And rather than the EV investment itself determining the move's cooldown, it's the Pokemon's actual speed stat. At a speed stat of 22, there's no reduction in the cooldown. The next breakpoint is at 50 speed, which reduces the move's cooldown by just under a second, and every 30 speed points beyond that reduces cooldowns by 1 second until you cap it out at 200 speed, where the cooldown is reduced by 5.93 seconds. It's because of this that, for the most part, Pokemon don't really run any speed investment in this game. 99% of the time, the optimal way to train your Pokemon is just to max out their HP so they can eat hits better, and max out whichever offensive stat you're using so they hit harder. The best example I could find for a Pokemon actually running speed investment is from No Bottle Caps' Mega Pyroar set, where they run 148 speed investment specifically because it causes Earth Power and Dark Pulse to hit the minimum cooldown of 3 seconds, meaning they'd basically always have one or the other ready to go. This cooldown and startup mechanic causes a lot of moves which would typically be strong to be passed up for other moves which would not normally be used in traditional Pokemon battles. For example, Close Combat may track Pokemon really well and is very strong, but it takes forever to come out, and most Pokemon will opt to run Brick Break instead because of this. Brick Break may have short range, but the startup is super fast and the cooldown is basically nothing, so it's almost always available. And it even helps counter another strong set of moves in the game. Light Screen and Reflect are very powerful moves as they reduce the damage Pokemon take from attacks even more so than the game naturally reduces them. Attacks in Pokemon Legends ZA will only deal 66% of the damage they would normally deal to a Pokemon unless that Pokemon is using a plus move, in which case they'll deal 90% of the damage they normally would, and the only way to deal damage that's 1-to-1 with traditional Pokemon battles is actually to use a super effective plus move. This is why when you battle in these games, you might find Pokemon surviving attacks that you really wouldn't expect them to. And possibly the single coolest thing about this game's battle system is the complete reworking of certain moves. Attacks like Dig, Fly, and Bounce, which would normally take 2 turns to go off in normal Pokemon games, now grant you momentary invulnerability, then track the opponent no matter where they run to deal damage. The only ways to reliably avoid these attacks are to switch the Pokemon out to confuse the tracking or using Protect. Even Dragon Rush got this treatment for some reason, making it the best widely available dragon move in the game. Moves like Drill Run, Brave Bird, and Flare Blitz now allow the Pokemon to charge into groups of opponents to deal damage to everything in their way, and special spread moves like Blizzard, Icy Wind, and Heat Wave now track opponents from a distance and summon an AoE attack to hit multiple targets. But the biggest takeaway from this new battle system is that your Pokemon will have to take fights that they won't always want to, and it's because of this that coverage moves are the key to success. You only get 3 Pokemon and you can only switch 3 times per life, so cramming as many super effective moves for opposing Pokemon as you can onto one Pokemon will typically be your best bet. And it's because of this that most teams have Ice Punch, Ice Beam, Thunder Punch, and Thunderbolt somewhere to deal with many of the top tiers in the game. Speaking of which, what I'm going to be talking about in this section are the most obvious best Pokemon in the game, Pokemon that you would expect to see at the top. Of course, Garchomp is one of the best Pokemon in the game, if not the absolute best. Just taking a look at its stats, it's clear that it's a strong pick. Access to Stab on Earthquake, which is possibly the single best move in the game period, off of its 130 attack stat means that it'll be dealing massive damage to multiple opponents at once. Since the size of Earthquake scales with the user, trainers will opt to use specifically Alpha Garchomp as its plus Earthquake is one of the largest in the game. Pairing this with Swords Dance to buff its damage and running into a group to hit all of them at once is the reason that Garchomp is able to carry games for its team. Its only real competition in this role is Excadrill, who boasts a powerful Earthquake, but with the added advantage of having the Steel type to deal with Ice and Fairy Pokemon that Garchomp would normally fall right over to. Drill Run also allows it to chase down opponents much better than Garchomp, and Excadrill will almost always run either the Sugar Berry or Focus Sash to better deal with opposing Pokemon clicking Earthquakes to ensure it at least gets 1 or 2 attacks off in a fight. But Garchomp is basically always forced to run either the Focus Sash or Yache Berry as its item to make sure it doesn't get hunted down every game to one of Pokemon Legends EA's stranger top tiers. Normally, being an Ice type would be a hindrance to a Pokemon like Glaceon, but Glaceon's naturally high 130 base special attack stat, combined with a Life Orb and Ice Beam, means that it can snipe Garchomps from basically anywhere on the battlefield on some maps. And its access to Freeze Dry allows for it to one-shot Gyarados as the move is super effective against water types. Glaceon in the main series of games has a pretty low speed stat at just 65, but in Legends ZA it keeps up pretty well and can run away from plenty of Pokemon. Even against neutral targets, a Combine boosted Ice Beam with a Life Orb will deal substantial damage and score collateral KOs, but it does have to fear being countered by our next top tier. Chandelure has an impressive 145 base special attack stat and access to Stab on the single best fire move in the game of Heat Wave. This attack not only tracks opponents and has huge AoE damage when used as a plus move, meaning it's capable of taking out groups of opponents at the same time, but Chandelure also has decent movement speed, meaning it's able to easily run away from opponents trying to rush it down since it has a head start due to attacking from range. Range is actually what really makes special attackers really powerful in this game, especially Clawitzer. Clawitzer may not have good bulk or move very fast, but it's got incredible damage off of its 120 base special attack stat and plethora of coverage moves, and it's so powerful that it might just be the single best water type in the game at the moment. Clawitzer is the sniper of Pokemon Legends ZA battles, as its typical moveset includes Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, Flash Cannon, and Focus Blast. There are very few Pokemon in this game that can safely approach Clawitzer, as these coverage moves give it a super effective option into nearly every relevant Pokemon in the game, and its only real drawback is how slow it moves combined with its frail stats. The final Pokemon I want to talk about in this section could be considered on the fringe of being a top tier, but I really couldn't find anywhere else to place it in this video. Machamp is without a doubt the single best fighting type Pokemon in the game. This is due to its solid stats all around and its excellent coverage. I consider Machamp sort of a physical variant of Clawitzer, but rather than attacking with coverage from range, Machamp excels at rushing down opponents with bulk up boosted Brick Breaks, close combats, and coverage Ice Punches and Thunder Punches. It's not nearly as common as any of the other Pokemon in this section, but it's still up there in terms of viability. But I think it's time to address the elephant in the room. We haven't talked at all about any Mega Pokemon. Mega Pokemon are kind of in a strange spot in Pokemon Legends ZA's metagame. Mega Pokemon aren't always necessarily bad, but only a few are considered true top tiers. We need to circle back to the battle format to explain why. These matches only last 3 minutes, and every time you Mega Evolve a Pokemon, you lose a couple of very valuable seconds that could be spent attacking or taking KOs otherwise. Yes, you can use the animation strategically to get invulnerability for a second, but more often than not, this just results in you having to take a different attack than the one intended for you initially. And when you keep in mind that you'll likely have to Mega Evolve multiple times in a match to make sure you're always dealing as much damage as you can, there's a decent amount of wasted time here. It's because of this that the broad sentiment regarding Mega Pokemon is that most of the Pokemon like Garchomp, Excadrill, and Chandelure, which have Mega forms, are much better just running an item to improve matchups or damage output while not needing to do the animation every time they want to deal out real damage. And if a Pokemon requires a Mega Evolution to be viable, then it's not actually super viable, such as the case with Mega Mawile or Mega Frostlass. Mega Frostlass especially, since it's just a worse Glaceon in nearly every single situation in ranked matches. The only exception to this rule seems to be Mega Skarmory, and that's for a very good reason. Many players will run Mega Skarmory as their sole Mega because it has a solid matchup into the top tiers like Excadrill and Garchomp, and to an extent Glaceon. It's able to wall them out by resisting or being immune to their best attacks, allowing it the option to Swords Dance and Brave Bird into groups without using its Mega form, and then ultimately use the Mega form when they really want to hit hard with it. But it's often paired with non-Mega top tiers like Chandelure and Garchomp to ensure not as much time is wasted trying to Mega Evolve every few seconds. But which Megas are actually worth running in this game? I'd say the list includes Mega Skarmory, of course, Mega Metagross, Mega Gyarados, and Mega Charizard X. Mega Metagross has great coverage options, deals incredible damage to everything off of its very powerful Heavy Slam, and can even 1v1 Garchomps and Excadrills, which should hypothetically win the matchup. And since it's perfectly fine in its base form without an item, running the Mega isn't much of a drawback. Mega Gyarados is in a very similar place, with it being already quite the powerful Pokemon in its base form that doesn't need an item to deal huge damage off of Bounce and Waterfall. And once it Megas, it gets an even larger and more powerful Waterfall, and a better defensive typing, and access to Stab on Crunch. And finally, Mega Charizard X is questionable as Charizard isn't the strongest Pokemon in its base form, but Charizard simply having access to Swords Dance and Flare Blitz in its base form means that it's capable of holding its own until it gets its Mega form and is ready to start sweeping. This isn't to say that Mega Pokemon aren't viable at all. As a matter of fact, one of the most appealing things about ZA ranked battles is the fact that you can kind of make anything work. Plenty of Mega Delphox, Mega Electros, and Mega Greninja teams have done really well. They're just far more niche than other Pokemon. But niches are what give this game its identity, and I think it's finally time to talk about Watchog. Alright, here's the beans and cheese of the video. I already know that this is what you all really wanted to learn about. This is the part of the video where I talk about all the strange Pokemon that have managed to carve out a niche for themselves in Legends EA's competitive metagame. Watchog is arguably one of the most useless Pokemon ever introduced into the games. In traditional games, it has no real abilities, an underwhelming move pool, and some of the most mediocre stats you could get away with giving a Pokemon that supposedly evolves from something. But in Pokemon Legends ZA, we can ignore almost all of that and just use it like a big stick. Watchog may have an attack stat of just 85, but it's very capable of wiping entire lobbies. Currently, Watchog isn't the most common Pokemon, but Watchog runs a moveset of Focus Energy, Swords Dance, and Giga Impact with a Scope Lens as its held item. When boosting critical hit rates, if a Pokemon reaches a +3 crit rate, every move from that point on will crit. The Scope Lens item gives Watchog a +1 crit rate, and using Focus Energy gives it an additional +2, meaning suddenly Watchog is walking around threatening to crit anything in front of it. And when you set up a Swords Dance, Watchog is able to deal massive AoE damage to anything in the immediate vicinity with Giga Impact. I mean, just watch this clip. Nice. Yeah, Watchog isn't common, but you better watch your back once you see it strolling around the battlefield. There are some people who prefer to use Kangaskhan in this role, but I would argue that Watchog is a little bit more effective for one simple reason. Watchog has access to Swords Dance, but Kangaskhan only has access to Workup. In Legends ZA, you aren't able to boost any stats to +2, it's only ever +1 or -1. They compensate for this fact by making it so moves that would normally boost you to +2, like Swords Dance, increase your stat for a longer amount of time than moves that would increase it by +1, like Workup. Because of this fact, Watchog has a much longer window to run around and find the ideal target to hit with its Giga Impact, where Kangaskhan is likely going to lose its attack buff and not deal as much damage to the Pokemon in front of it. Giga Impact is just one of many moves capable of dealing tons of damage to groups of Pokemon, but another notorious one is Head Smash. Head Smash is a 150 base power rock-type attack that has the user charge in and damage anything in its path while taking 50% recoil. While many Pokemon like Aggron, Emboar, and Aegislash will run Head Smash whenever they see play, the single strongest Head Smash user is Tyrantrum, since it's a rock type and has a base 121 attack stat. Tyrantrum isn't typically a very powerful dragon Pokemon, but having access to a move that can easily pick up multiple KOs while third-partying fights and requires absolutely no setup makes it so Tyrantrum actually does see niche usage in ZA ranked battles. Speaking of moves that are great for third-partying, we should probably talk about the electric types in Legend ZA. Light Ball Pikachu plays very similarly to Watchog in the fact that it has to set up and then charge into groups of Pokemon. The Light Ball item doubles Pikachu's attack and special attack stats, meaning that it hits about as hard as Hoopa Unbound. It hits a massive 234 attack stat that, when paired with the move Charge, which causes the next electric type attack to deal double damage, lets Pikachu one-shot most Pokemon in the game with Volt Tackle. As a matter of fact, almost every electric type in this game will run Charge, as it's an invaluable tool. Since you can duck out of fights and set up Charge safely, it allows for electric type Pokemon to become some of the most threatening Pokemon to leave alone for any amount of time. And when you consider just how oppressive the tracking on Thunderbolt is, these Pokemon function as terrifying snipers. Ampharos is by far the most common electric type Pokemon at the moment, since its decent bulk and access to both Light Screen and Reflect allows for it to lead off games and set up screens, then go for Charged Thunderbolts until they need to switch out to a partner Pokemon. But a fun pick that does see some niche usage is Stunfisk. Stunfisk has a few interesting traits that go in its favor. It's hard to spot on the battlefield due to the fact that it's like small and flat, so it's one of the easiest Pokemon to hide in plain sight to charge up with and then snipe opponents. Along with this, as a ground type, it's not a terrible counterpick to fight the opposing electric type Pokemon that are more common, like Ampharos. It's even able to deal with opposing Excadrill, which normally walls out Ampharos, as Excadrill is a steel ground type. Stunfisk is just meant to be a pretty fun pick that allows for you to counter a couple of meta Pokemon. Finally, I want to talk about the Eviolite users that run around on occasion. Eviolite is a held item that gives not fully evolved Pokemon a 50% increase to the defense and special defense stats. Most of the typical Eviolite users in competitive Pokemon aren't currently available in Pokemon Legends ZA, but the item still has usage on 2 Pokemon. Doublade is sometimes run as an Eviolite user due to its massive defense and passable 110 attack stat. It's preferred over Aegislash for reasons that I'll get to later on in this video, but it's a pretty physically bulky Pokemon that you occasionally see running around in games, absolutely tanking Earthquakes from Garchomp and Excadrill and somehow winning the 1v1. But it hasn't been super common due to the short range of its best moves, Iron Head and Shadow Claw. It's fine, but it can be somewhat of a liability in certain matches. And the other niche Eviolite user is Whirlipede of all Pokemon, which I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I've seen more Whirlipede online than I've seen Mega Scolipede, so we gotta put bro on fraud watch. Whirlipede has okay movement speed, great bulk, and access to the most annoying combination of moves in Infestation and Toxic. Effectively, what Whirlipede aims to do is use Infestation to trap a Pokemon in, preventing them from switching and softening them up with Toxic, at which point the user can switch Whirlipede out for a partner Pokemon who has the type advantage over the trapped Pokemon and usually take a free KO, since in this game, Infestation doesn't release the Pokemon when you switch out the user. You'll typically only really see this happen at the very start of a match, but a free KO is a free KO and it can make all the difference. But yeah, it's really silly. I once lost a Pokemon off a Focus Sash Spinarak doing this to me though, and that was pretty embarrassing. You might have noticed that up until this point, I refrained from really mentioning the various legendary Pokemon that are currently legal in ranked battles. These include Xerneas, Yveltal, Zygarde, Diancie, and Mewtwo. And that's because, rather than talk about what they really do, I want to point out that while these Pokemon are legal and see heavy usage, especially Xerneas, this is arguably the most balanced we've ever had legendary Pokemon be in a competitive setting. Like I said, Xerneas is by far the most powerful legendary Pokemon in this game, but the free-for-all nature of matches combined with the lack of the Fairy Aura ability makes it a pretty reasonable Pokemon to deal with. Xerneas players will often find themselves capable of dealing tons of damage, but having to swap out after just a couple of attacks to avoid losing a life. And the limited switches make it so at some point, even without directly taking damage on Xerneas, the user will be locked out from the Pokemon until they lose their life. Yes, Moonblast, Thunderbolt, and Focus Blast are all strong moves that can deal with some of Xerneas' supposed counters like Mega Skarmory or Excadrill, but a smart switch or protect will just guarantee you a win in the encounter versus Xerneas. Yveltal is another powerful attacker, not nearly as strong as Xerneas, but its flying typing leaves it susceptible to being taken out by the Charge Electric type users and Ice Beam Glaceons common in the game. This guy just feels super balanced. It's kind of high risk, high reward, even though it is super bulky, the typing just isn't ideal. Zygarde may have a Mega Form and an attack capable of one-shotting literally everything on the field at the same time, but the time it takes to set up and fire off an attack with it is very dangerous, as all that time spent setting it up can be thwarted by a single stray Ice Beam that wasn't even meant for it. Zygarde will just always drop. You're telling me that you need to get Zygarde to 50% HP, let it switch into its complete form, collect the Mega Energy to Mega Evolve it, and then you just die before you even get an attack off? Yeah, no, that's crazy. Like, it's a very big time investment that only a few people are willing to go through with. And even the startup of Nihilite is long enough that you can prevent the move while it's in the process of using it. You can just knock it out before the move comes out. Mega Diancie is just kind of niche and not super strong, so there's no real point in discussing it. All of the Mewtwo forms are very powerful, but yet again, far more manageable than they've ever been in a competitive setting, due to the fact that they sometimes need to fight 2 or 3 Pokemon at once. The lack of abilities and free-for-all nature just make legendary Pokemon easier to deal with than they would normally be in a traditional Pokemon battle, to the point that even though you're restricted to using at most one of them, many players just don't use any. A well-rounded team of non-legendary Pokemon will do just fine. Finally, while I did explain that it feels like you can get away with using almost anything in this game, I do want to talk about some Pokemon that feel almost hopelessly bad. We'll start off with Aegislash, since it's the one that you could probably get away with the easiest. Aegislash isn't exactly a bottom tier, but the fact that it has to go through its stance change animation before attacking means that it's super vulnerable to just getting KO'd before even throwing a single move out. It effectively has 2 different startups it has to deal with, and this has led to players having to get real creative, like running Focus/Head Smash Aegislash sets. It's just not super reliable despite its incredible stats. Diggersby is bad for the opposite reason. While Aegislash managed to keep its ability in a game with no abilities, since it's so integral to Aegislash's identity, Diggersby lost its ability, which leaves it hopelessly bad. Without its ability Huge Power, it really has nothing going for it. It's not fast, it's not bulky, and not having Huge Power leaves it with just a 56 base attack stat. There's literally no reason to ever run this Pokemon. It feels like you're running a not fully evolved one. And broadly, the free-for-all format of the games makes defensive Pokemon liabilities more than anything. Umbreon is the one and only Pokemon I can think of that can really get away with it, due to it being able to set up screens and switch into a partner Pokemon, but Pokemon like Mega Sableye and Mega Audino seriously struggle to keep up with even mid-tier regular Pokemon. Mega Sableye especially, as its offensive stats are nearly non-existent. Defensive stall strategies will just result in you softening up an opponent until another player runs up and ultimately KOs both of you. And for that reason, this game is almost exclusively an offensive Pokemon's game. Overall, I really enjoy what has come from Pokemon Legends EA's ranked battles. Most people don't take them super seriously, and it's kind of like a party game all things considered, but there are some tournaments held that gave me lots of useful information for this video, especially those held by That's a Plus One, who I'll link in the description down below. But I'm really excited to see what comes of this game now that the DLC is right around the corner, and we'll have tons of new Pokemon to try out in ranked matches. But let me know what you think about Pokemon Legends EA's strange metagame in the comment section below. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It'd mean the world to me. If you want to support me further, you can check out my Patreon page or become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button below the video. This gets you sneak peeks at future videos, access to bonus content, and access to my supporter-only Discord server, where you can hang out and team build with other community members. You also see your name at the end of all my videos like all these lovely people. Special thanks to my most boosted supporters, Avatar67 and Club, for their generous pledges. Another way you can support my channel is to check out all the videos in the playlist on screen right now. I know you'll find something in there that you'll enjoy. I also have a second channel where I play Pokemon Legends EA and VGC and discuss current metagame trends, and a Twitch channel where I stream, both of which will be in the description. Or you can just tune into my YouTube live streams on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 6 PM CST. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.